Waheguru Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ki Fateh. My name is Grandma Singh, and I'm starting a new series called Secrets of a Sikh. And the reason why I'm starting this, even though it's quite a bold claim for me to say that I am a Sikh, is that I feel like growing up, or maybe it's just Asian culture, it's very rare that you get to have a really honest conversation about Sikhi. I don't know why, it's just never been really a comfortable conversation that I've had growing up. And I know that there's a lot of people around me that don't talk about their Sikhi. It's not something that they'll casually speak about. I remember one time someone asked me in a Gurdwara, one of my cousins asked me oh, how's your Sikhi going? And I was 22, 23 years old. And I was just kind of taken back. I was like, whoa, someone's actually going to ask me about my Sikhi? Most people say, oh, it's a really personal journey. Don't talk about it. Don't speak about it. But I actually think that does a lot of harm for people. And I think there's really a good benefit to speaking about your Sikhi and your experiences and just being honest as well. I think what I want this kind of series to be is just more of a reflection and just really, really just being transparent about what's going on in my life and the way that I've thought about things in the past in terms of Sikhi, and hopefully can provide a little bit of clarity, but also just a kind of just a sense of you're not the only one who is struggling with your Sikhi. You're not the only one that is sometimes confused about what to do, and hopefully just helps to guide you to actually stay on your path of Sikhi, even if things aren't perfect, even if things aren't the way that you always want them to be. So I wanted to kind of start off this series with the most kind of obvious and most pressing thing that I think a lot of people have when it comes to Sikhi, and that is okay, if I'm going to be a Sikh, why should I bother, right? Because the thing is about being a Sikh is it's really difficult. You have to be quite different to the standard person. You have to think quite differently to most people, and your priorities are just they're just different. So what I wanted to try and explain is a little bit more about my personal reasoning behind being a Sikh, and hopefully it can help you guys also understand or maybe even just reflect on why you are a Sikh and why you're trying to go down this journey. So for me, the main kind of thing is obviously born in a Sikh household. I've always been taught good Sikh values. I've learned a lot about kind of Sikh history growing up, and I've just kind of been around it a lot. So it's naturally that's what I'm going to default to. But one of the main reasons behind me embracing Sikhi a lot as I've grown up is that I think the more I reflected on the type of person that I wanted to be, I want to be someone that is humble. I want to be someone that is brave. I want to be someone that does help others. Those are the kind of characteristics that I wanted for myself. And as I started to look into, okay, well, this is what I want to do, or this is the kind of person that I want to be, I would start to reflect on okay, what am I actually doing? And I used to be quite angry, a bit of a selfish, I was fairly selfish as a kid, or growing up. I would think a lot about myself and what I want, and I realized that's not the kind of person that I want to be. So how do I move towards being someone better? And what I realized that is it's really difficult to actually break out of your current identity. It's really difficult to try and change up who you are, your characteristics. So I realized that I needed some help, and when I looked around, the kind of people that would inspire me, the kind of people that I'd look up to, they were the ones that were really involved in Sikhi. They're the ones that practiced it. And I think that that's what kind of solidified it for me when I realized that you can't just change who you are by thinking, oh, I'm going to be a different person. But you actually have to discipline yourself. You have to control yourself. You have to learn new skills. And I was okay, well, where can I learn this from? And you see other YouTube videos online, you see people talk about it, but I was actually experiencing it through some people in my life that I would look up to. And off the back of that, it made me think, okay, if I want to become a better person, if I want to develop better characteristics, then I should probably learn from the same source that these people around me are learning from. And that's why I was starting to think, okay, look, I can really become a better person. I can really help more people around me. I can really be more satisfied, just even from a selfish point of view. You know the feeling when you go to bed at night and you're I'm not the person that I should be. That voice quietens down the closer you are to the person that you want to be. So I was okay, well, if I move towards the person that I want to be, I'd be more content and more satisfied with who I am. And that's where like Sikhi kind of played that role of like, okay, it can teach me the values that I should have. And I think that's one of the interesting things as well, like especially growing up, I think it was like around 16, 17 years old, you really start to realize that culture in itself, it's very like, it's man-made. It's like a lot of it's like just constructed by the people around you, and they set the standard of what's good or bad. And what I realized is that growing up, Sikhi always told me that ego is a bad thing and you want to eliminate it. And in today's culture, ego is not a bad thing. Like, people try to teach you to have more ego, and they try to say, like, oh no, you're worth this, and you're really good, and you're amazing, and this and that. And I was like, this is the complete opposite of what I've been taught. But because I had the teachings of Sikhi, I could look at someone who was egotistical and someone who wasn't egotistical and be like, well, if you play out their life over 5 years' time, I would definitely want to be the person that's not egotistical. So I realized that the more I would look into the world and I would think about the values that Sikhi taught and the values that were present to me in other cultures and other belief systems, I was like, Sikhi is definitely the one that I want to lean more and more into. So off the back of that, like, that's where kind of it just got stronger and stronger. Like, my faith and my connection with Sikhi just got stronger and stronger. And it got to the point where I knew that I'm never going to leave this. I'm never going to move away from this, because I know that it's actually essential. Like, I can imagine my life if I didn't have Sikh values. And it would just be like lies on lies on lies, and like just so much fakeness, so much emptiness of like just random stuff that I would tell myself, but it didn't actually hold any kind of meaning. It doesn't actually hold any kind of weight to it. And what I mean by that is, like, I know that if I didn't have Sikhi, I would have no reason to try and like be more humble. And if I was just egotistical, and I've been there as well, like, I know what it's like to be egotistical. I've definitely been a little bit too egotistical at times, and I still am to some point. But the more I am like that, the more I don't like being like that. So I know, like, if I didn't have Sikhi to help guide me to the person that I wanted to be, I'd feel a lot less comfortable with who I am. And ultimately, like, that's it. Like, that's what Sikhi does for me. That's why I believe in Sikhi. That's why I want to encourage the people that aren't comfortable with themselves, that want to be better, that know that they could be better, that need some help. Like, Sikhi is the thing that can guide you down that path. And I know that from experience. And I know that from the teachings. And I think the reason why so many people stick with Sikhi, the reason why people are so, like, happy with it, is because it's not some sort of, like, superficial ritual where you, like, go and you just do certain things a certain number of times and, like, that's it. It's not about the things you do on paper per se, but it's more about the person that you become through doing the things that Sikhi tells you to do. So that's my kind of like side of it. Now, I want to dig a little bit deeper into this kind of journey, and I'll talk about it more on a different episode. But one thing that I do want to make clear is it's never been the case when I was growing up that I was like, I'm so bought in and sold on Sikhi that, like, this is it. There were definitely points in my life where I was thinking, I don't know if Sikhi is something that I want to commit to. I feel like, it's just taking away too much of my freedom. There's things that I want to do, there's things that I like, that Sikhi is making me, like, kind of pull away from. And it's not easy to turn your back on, like, culture or what other people might expect of you, or like just that kind of feeling of isolation as well sometimes. Like, like, my family are all Sikh, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that you don't feel isolated, especially when you're in schools or different friendship groups and everyone else is doing one thing and you've got to kind of sit out and you're not part of everything else that's going on. Or maybe you don't even agree with what they're doing, and then maybe there is no one else around you. Like, it's really hard when you don't have the right kind of people around you to be able to stick with Sikhi. And I feel like I experienced that quite a lot growing up. Like, there was definitely times where I felt like I don't have the right sangat around me. I don't have the right people around me. And at those points, that's when, for me, that's when it was hardest to be a Sikh. So I'm going to be talking about this on a few more episodes in the future. But the main thing that I kind of wanted to get across is that the reason why I try to actively pursue Sikhi and become a better Sikh is because I know it'll turn me into a better person. And the reason that I'm making this series is because I know what it's like to feel isolated and not feel like you actually know what to do with your Sikhi, or whether you're making the right choices, and whether or not you want to actually stay being a Sikh. And hopefully the episodes that are upcoming will just share a little bit more honesty and transparency about how it feels to be a Sikh sometimes, especially when you're not living in India, especially when you're living abroad in a completely, like, a country that doesn't really know Sikhi very well, is how I'd put it. So that's it from me for this episode. If you guys are interested in watching more videos or listening to me speak about this, then definitely do subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next video.